Good evening and welcome to a brand new series in Australian sim racing, brought to you by Allusion Events. It's the iCart series and it's roaring into life tonight with 48 laps around Circuit of the Americas. We'll be using the full 5.5 kilometre circuit and the drivers can have 20 corners in which they can showcase their talent. And the question tonight is who's going to write themselves a place in the history books as the winner of the first ever iCart series race. Stay tuned and we'll find out not too long from now. It's set to be an absolutely cracking race, and the guys here at Performance East Streaming, well, we couldn't be more thrilled to bring you all the action live from every round this season. Bringing you all the fancy camera angles tonight is Matt Hunter, and your two commentators, myself, Ryan Jones, and the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. E53 himself, Edward Foster.
G'day Ryan, g'day everyone, great to be here.
Yes, g'day Edward, and g'day to everyone at home. We apologise for the delay in getting this stream up. A few technical difficulties on our side, but we're all good to go now. And the drivers are actually just gritting up on the grid now. So what we'll do is I'll get you, Edward, to run us through the grid for this race.
Absolutely. So we're going to have a rolling start here, of course, as we, excuse me, often do in American racing. So we've got Gary Hamilton. He's got to start on the inside of row one, off the pole. Right next to him, Chris Purnell, and then we've got James Foster, Mirko Doutnak on row 2, row 3, Michael Skurlock and Dave Douglas. Row 4, Mick Buist and Joshua Carroll Walden. Then we've got Sam Katakazinis and Matthew Clute. There row 5, row 6, Rob Carmichael, Adam McCloy. And we've also got 4 drivers at the back of the field who didn't actually set a qualifying time. They are Luke Lucas, Scott McClintock, Kevin Bomford and Fitzroy Beaumont's going to be the last car to roll off for this one.
Yeah, we've got 16 cars in the field today. Bit of a small turnout tonight, but we're hoping for some great action. And we don't really know who's going to be the four-man on this series, and we don't know who's fast in IndyCar and who's not. But looking at qualifying, Gary Hamilton, he's set a 46.4, and Chris Purnell in second, so 47.1. He's got 7 tenths over Purnell, and that's a pretty interesting time from Hamilton, isn't it, Edward?
Yeah, it is, and I mean Gary Hamilton's one of those guys who's very, very well renowned on the road courses, and I think he's a little bit of an unknown quantity on the ovals. I certainly haven't seen him race any oval races, so the champion of this series is going to be the one who manages to put that together. The road side and the oval side, very, very diverse skill set required to win this championship. So the best driver in this series, the champion, is going to come from the guy who actually does that overall job the best, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, is who is going to be the best on both disciplines.
Yeah, there's quite a number of guys in this field that are either road course specialists or maybe oval specialists, and certainly outside front row, Chris Purnell, he's most certainly an oval specialist, and a lot of the Illusion guys in this race, such as Mirko Dornak and Michael Skurlock as well, and don't forget Dave Douglas too, they all have plenty of experience on the ovals, but that experience does come in a NASCAR, which are completely different beasts to drive compared to these Indy cars, and so there's still a slight question as to whether they can adapt to those oval skills from a closed NASCAR with 4 wheels under the fenders, where you can beat, you can bang, you can race hard, to an Indy car. It's 4 open wheels. If you have a bit of contact, you could be in a world of trouble.
Absolutely, and just what you were talking there, Ryan, there was one of the guys at the back of the field, I'm not sure exactly which car it was, struggled to get away. I think they may have struggled actually getting that car started. They have got it started now. We're going to get a full field up there behind the pace car ready to take the green flag for this one. So good to see that they managed to get that little issue sorted out. But I'm very interested to see who's going to actually get this done. On qualifying speed, you'd say that Gary Hamilton's going to be the favourite, but of course you've got tyre life, strategy, things like that are going to come into it. Pace car has pulled off now, and we're going to be going racing in just a moment.
They're going to round that final corner of the field now in the hands of Gary Hamilton in that Verizon-sponsored car. Purnell was outside and Foster looking in behind them for third place. They're going to come down this main straight, waiting for that green flag to fly any second now. They're still waiting. The green flag goes, and we're away in Coda, and it's a good start for Gary Hamilton, and James Foster as well is going to follow him through to the inside of Chris Purnell. Foster dives down to the inside. Can he get his nose in there? No, he can't. He has to back out of it. Very bold from Foster, and now look out for Purnell. Round to the outside of Gary Hamilton he goes, and up the inside of turn number 2. It's a fantastic start for Purnell.
Yeah, Purnell's done a great job there, hasn't he? Getting through into the lead. And he just kind of sat back there, sat to the outside while knowing probably that there was going to be a little bit of concertina effect there on the inside. He was just able to keep that momentum up and drive right round the outside there. And Hamilton's going to be, probably wasn't expecting to be looking at the gearbox of another car so early on in this one.
Yeah, very smart jobbing there from for Chris Purnell, and he's managed to take up lead away, and we'll see what he can do with it now. Of course, down this big long back straight, this slipstream effect's really going to come into play, and Chris Purnell's going to be reeling the back foot because he's run wide there at the hairpin, and now Hamilton's going to be well and truly in his draft. We'll see how much he can suck up and get down to the inside if he can, or will Purnell cover him off as they get down towards the end of the back straight. Hamilton looks down to the inside, doesn't pull the trigger, and he'll just sit in behind Chris Purnell for now. Oh, there's contact behind. That's one of the Illusion cars. It's Mirko Dornak's gone sideways. Everyone's managed to avoid him, and there's cars scattering everywhere at the moment.
Yeah, it didn't look like contact to me. It looked like he actually locked the rears up and did that all on his own. I think he had to check up maybe a little bit more than he was expecting, but unfortunately, fortunately for him, nobody's collected him, but unfortunately, he's dropped a load of places in that as well so early on.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Most of the field now single file. There's a bit of side-by-side action further back with Carol Walden and Sankato Kazinas, Luke Lucas and Fitzroy Beaumont as well, just trying to sort themselves out. And now the whole field single file is going to come around that final corner and begin lap number 2. So after the first lap, it's Purnell that leads from Hamilton. James Foster still in third. Dave Douglas is up to 4th. Skurlock 5th. Dornak 6th. Clute 7th. Boyce 8th. And we've had a spin for Carol Walden back in the pack. And yep, he's gone right to the back of this train. That's a big mistake for Carol Walden there.
Yeah, we're seeing the field spread out as well. I mean, this is quite a long race, so those guys are going to have time to make amends for their early on mistakes, so long as they're not actually carrying any major damage. But we're seeing this top 3 really break away from the drivers behind, the pack behind being led by Dave Douglas now, of course. And we've got Purnell, Hamilton and Foster just clearing out from the rest of the field. And, Hamilton was the pace setter all the way through practice and all the way through qualifying, as we can see now.
Oh no, there's an issue for Matthew Clute. He's spun off from the exit of turn number 7 or 8. I'm sorry, I'm not too sure. But he's spun, he's gone into the wall, and behind him, Adam McCoy's actually had to spin all by himself as well. He's facing backwards on the circuit. And
some of these drivers were saying how bad these cars here are actually on cold tyres, and that appears to have possibly caught Clute out. He's just gotten on throttle. He was on that slippery bit of green on the outside of the curb there, and that's just spat him off into the wall, and there's big damage to the front of that 54.
That's disastrous for Matty Clute, and he's got some big steering damage as well. He's right hand left hand all the way on top of the steering wheel trying to go in a straight line, so I suspect that might be race done for Matthew Clute there. That's a big shame.
Meanwhile, we've actually had a change for the lead as well. Hamilton has got a move done on Chris Purnell. It looks as though there may have been a little bit of push to pass involved in it. For those who don't understand what push to pass is, it's a button on the steering wheel the drivers can use it up to 10 times per race. And it just gives them that little bit of extra power, a little bit of extra RPM to get a passing move done or potentially defend from someone as well. But very textbook move there from Hamilton. And now he's actually starting to gap Purnell fairly significantly.
Yeah, it was a good move, and that last lap, Harrison was actually 1.3 seconds quicker than Chris Purnell, so that's a significant advantage. If he can keep that up for the rest of the race, he'll be a dominant runaway winner. But hopefully, for the sake of the race, Purnell and Foster can have something for him as they all snake through the S's there, turn 4, 5, 6, and 7. Dave Douglas, he's got a bit of pressure from Michael Skurlock. We'll see whether Skurlock's got the pace of his teammate of Chris Purnell, and whether he can get past Douglas and maybe try to roar up into the back of Foster. Just looking back throughout the field now for any other battles, and everyone else all pretty spread out. As I say that, there's a spin in the pack, and it's Luke Lucas, I think, who's going around to the S's, and he's going to make contact with absolutely nothing. He's going to go on his way for now, and I don't think that'll be the last time we see someone spin out today.
Yeah, no harm done there, and he'll live to fight another day, having not hit anything at that part of the course. And just one thing is we're noticing, we've got that little bit of, a second pack forming around about 5 seconds off the back of the leaders at the moment. And there's 3 Illusion cars. In fact, I think that Skurlock's actually just got a move done on Dave Douglas. He has indeed. So Michael Skurlock moving up in that 4th position. Then we've got Dave Douglas behind him. And then we've got Mirko Doutnak and Mick Boyce up behind them as well. So he's in a little bit of an Illusion sandwich at the moment. Certainly a good turnout from the Allusion boys tonight.
Yeah, of course, big thanks to Allusion Events, obviously, who have put on this series and are looking to get the IndyCar scene going again in Australia, and obviously doing their part to get it going as well, because there's a big turnout for the Illusion boys, and just confirming that Matthew Clout has unfortunately retired from this race. So that's our first retiree.
Yeah, he didn't really have any option, did he? It had about 90 degrees worth of tow out on it, didn't it? And he certainly wouldn't have been able to continue from there, really, with that kind of damage. Nothing that the crew can do short of rebuild the front end entirely. And of course, by that stage, he's going to be so far down, there's no point continuing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, these Indy cars are not quite as robust as those NAS cars, which Clout has so much experience in, and bit of contact and race done. Like, you got to really be careful of that on these Indy cars. You really can't afford to touch anything, really.
Yeah, it's open wheelers in a nutshell, isn't it? You know, they're very sensitive, very highly strung cars, and any kind of contact at all is just usually enough to break off a piece. And they're so reliant on these Lero pieces and suspension pieces to be exactly where they've got them set. And any kind of alteration to that can really have a major impact on the way these cars handle. One guy who's not struggling with any kind of issues of that nature at the moment is Gary Hamilton. He's 1.2 seconds ahead of Chris Purnell as they crossed the line last time. But James Foster just sort of keeping Purnell a little bit honest. I think he may have actually closed that gap to Purnell in front. So, yeah, has he got anything for him, maybe?
We'll find out not too long from now. As we just look further back in the pack, Mick Boy.
Yeah, he's had a spin there, hasn't he? And just sort of, has he had a spin or just sort of run off the track?
I think he just ran off the track there, as now Boyce can look down to the inside. Through 17 and 18, he's going to go side by side with Douglas, and Douglas can have the inside of turn 19 if he wants it. He's going to just sit back and let Boyce take that move around the outside of turn 19. So good move from Mick Boyce there.
That's actually Mirko Doutnak who's got that move done on Dave Douglas. So he's gone around Dave Douglas. Boyce, of course, was the guy that we just saw off the track a moment ago, and he's just sitting a little bit behind Dave Douglas there, I believe. So that's actually Doutnak who's gained that position. So Douglas starting to fall back through the field a little way. So yeah, he's probably not got the pace at the moment that he would rather have, but at the same time, it's going to be a long race. We're only up to lap 5 of 48, so certainly a lot of racing left in this one yet.
Well, at least I was called to the right team. It was an Illusion car, at least.
And they're all painted very similarly, aren't they?
They're all painted identically, which makes it very difficult when you're sitting up far away and Dornack just runs wide. And now Douglas is going to get back to his inside, and all that good work that Dornack just put in, he's going to have to do it all again. He should get a good slipstream down this back straight, though, as long as there's a good exit from this hairpin.
And it's just looking to me as though Dornak's actually got a little bit of damage to that front wing as well, which could actually be... I didn't notice that before, so I wonder if that's only just happened.
Yeah, that could be quite recent for him, as Boyce is now going to get down to the inside of Mirko Dornack as it comes down into turn number... I'm not going to have a guess there. Down to the end of the back straight, and Boyce is going to be able to complete the move, is he? Yes, he is. It's a good move from Boyce, textbook.
Yeah, he didn't fight him there, did he? No point fighting your teammate in a scenario like that. I think that aero damage is really going to be hurting Doutnak's pace. And as you can see, Dave Douglas has actually managed to extend on these two now. We'll see what kind of pace Boyce has got trying to work on the back of Douglas. I'm not sure that Doutnak's going to continue with that. Maybe he's going to look to make an early stop and get that front wing replaced.
Yeah, well, it's all a matter of whether that front wing... You would suspect that that would definitely be affecting his performance. Obviously... Oh no, that's a spin for Dornack, and yep, I'd say it maybe is affecting his performance. And luckily, he's kept it off the wall, and he's going to be able to flick this car around to a quick 360 and get it back going the right way. But yeah, obviously this car is so sensitive area that you get some damage on that front wing, you would suspect it's really going to hurt his performance. And maybe Dornack can't quite see that damage from his cockpit there, and it's unaware he's got that damage, but I'm sure maybe he'll find out sooner or later, and when he does, he might make that pit stop.
Oh, look, the way that wing's sticking up, I can tell you from experience, he can definitely see it. He'd be aware that there's that problem there. He'd definitely be able to feel it as well. But he's actually carried on past the pits for another lap, so he must at least fancy his chances of making a few changes on board and perhaps being able to deal with that. But of course, he's coming under a lot of pressure now from Josh Carroll Walden as well. And after running right up there in the top 5, he's now in danger of dropping back to the back end of the top 10. So I would imagine that as soon as the fuel window opens for him, he's going to be down the lane and getting some service done.
Yeah, big shame for Dornoch there, but it's still got plenty of time to turn it around. And just touching on that fuel window, and what we expect to see from this race is a two stop race, maybe 3 stops, depending on how nice rider you feel. We've heard that there's about 16 laps you can get out of a tank here, and you'll be coming in at the end of 16 laps and strapping on a fresh set of boots as well. But 16 lap stints does leave you at exactly 48 laps if you make 2 pit stops. So as I said, if you're hard on your fuel, you might just have to come in for a splash and dash, or maybe save a bit of fuel.
Well, I have heard two different schools of thought on this. I talked to a couple of drivers before this. I did hear exactly what you're referring to there, Ryan. But I've also had a couple of drivers say that they should be fine. They should be able to finish the lap, finish the race with around about 9 litres of fuel left in it. So perhaps it's going to be an easy two-stopper for some, at the very least. But James Foster's just looped it coming out of turn one. He just had a really good run on Purnell. He's been pressuring Purnell for quite a while, and he's just got on the power a little bit too early and actually looped that car, looped the 14 straight out of turn one. And yeah, that was shaping up to be a really good battle there for a moment, but unfortunately, he's thrown it all away.
He's thrown it away, James Foster. All that effort, he's gone down the drain. But I've said it before, say it again. 48 laps, plenty of time. And the important thing with these races is to not let yourself get flustered. Keep your composure, keep your cool, and just reset. Figure out what you did wrong and don't do it again. Obviously, these Indy cars so hypersensitive sometimes that you've really got to be careful getting that power down, and it can be really touch and go sometimes. And Foster just found out how touch and go it can be, as he's got Skurlock in behind him now. Well, let's see whether Skurlock can show some pace and get up onto the back of him.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way the race has panned out so far, relative pace, you'd say the answer to that question is no. Foster seems to have had a lot more pace than Skurlock throughout the race so far. But that being said, what was that spin born of? Was he starting to struggle with his tyres potentially? Has he taken too much out of this set? And Skurlock, we know he's been fighting with a few different cars and all the rest of it. So there could be a battle on here yet for third place. We'll see what James manages to do. See if Skurlock's able to do anything about it as well. One thing I can tell you is that Foster is certainly not somebody who loses his composure generally. He'll, if he has a spin like that, he'll curse to himself quietly, but he'll get back on with the job and won't make any mistakes onwards from there. So I'd expect him to regain everything and regain himself quite quickly. But of course, Skurlock's got the added advantage of being able to see Foster in front. He can see where he's braking, copy the lines that he's taking. He can really see everything that Foster is doing, and it's always a lot nicer to be the hunter rather than the hunted.
Yeah, it certainly is. I just watched a very fantastic move there from Sam Katakazinis. There we go. On Rob Carmichael for P number 7. He was working at the back of him for about 7 or 8 corners there and finally got the move done through turn 18. But that battle has brought Mirka Dornoch and Josh Cowan onto the back of these guys. So now we've got 4 cars within about 2 seconds of each other.
Yeah, he's carrying on, isn't he, Dornoch? He's obviously not of the opinion that he's suffering enough with that busted front wing to actually bother coming into the pits. And speaking of a busted front wing,
He's
Rob
had a spin, though.
has certainly seen better. Oh, commentators curse. Absolutely.
Dornoch's had a spin off turn 1. No, you've absolutely done him in. I was just about to say, too, he's 4 seconds of that fight on the Rob Carmichael and Sam Katakazinis in that last lap. So he was really coming up on those guys, but he's made it harder for himself again.
Yeah, Carmichael's had adventures of his own, hasn't he? I mean, that front wing is away without leave. It's definitely the left-hand side of it's completely gone. The right-hand side looks as though it wishes it was gone. And he's really suffering from that lack of downforce as well. You can see him snatching the front brakes into the turn. There's just nothing there to keep those front wheels planted into the track. And as a result, it's so easy to lock your brakes and everything else. And that's what he's struggling with at the moment.
Yeah, but that's what a lot of these guys can also adapt to. A lot of people already with damage to their front wing. Obviously, we touched on Dornoch and Joshua Carbon's got some damage too. Obviously, Carmichael. Sam Katakazinis looks like he's got a pretty good front wing at the moment. It's just up ahead of them. Mick Boyce and Dave Douglas are getting quite close together through turn 18 and 19 for the battle for 5th.
Yeah, it's probably the best battle on the track at the moment now, isn't it? I mean, Foster is extending from Skurlock. Foster's fallen about 13 seconds off the lead. But yeah, definitely a good run here from Prix getting up behind Dave Douglas. I think you'll probably look at getting on the push to pass here. There's a great opportunity to overtake into turn 1. But you also have to make sure that you get on the throttle well enough to get out of it properly. And Douglas demonstrating that to perfect effect there as he gets on the power a little bit too hard and the back end squirms a little, just enough to actually retain that position as they come down through the S's. No overtaking through here. You've just got to make sure that you get your line absolutely spot on and set up the driver in front for a move when you get to the next hard braking point.
Yeah, good defensive driving from Dave Douglas. Nick Boyce probably could have made a move into turn 1, but probably thought better of it, maybe thinking about that exit, realising Prix couldn't get it done. But look, he'll be looking for the slipstream down this back straight, try and get a good exit from this little hairpin. Douglas runs a little bit wide, it's going to hurt his momentum a bit, and Boyce might just be close enough if he gets back into the system at Douglas. He's just a bit outside of it at the moment. We'll see if he's close enough.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I reckon he's not as close as he was in the previous lap either. So he's there or thereabouts, and he seems to be able to gain a fair amount under braking. He also seems to be a little bit more confident on the throttle than Dave Douglas is at this point in the race as well. So it could be a tyre thing. It could just be the way that the track's evolving, but it certainly looks as though Boyce is having a nicer time of it than Dave Douglas. And I think if he does manage to get that move done, that they're both missing apexes and so on. And I think if he manages to get that move done, he's going to be able to extend that gap. But of course, he's got to be able to get that move done first.
Yeah, he does. We're only about 5 or 6 laps away, we reckon, from the pit window. We'll see whether the undercut's worth anything too later on this race. We'll see maybe if Nick Boyce is still behind Douglas, whether he chooses to pull the trigger and pit maybe a lap before Douglas does, and see if he can perform an undercut move on there. And probably not close enough into turn number 1 either. He's just not had the exit he needed off the last corner, and Douglas going to comfortably take his racing line as Boyce gets very close to the gearbox of Douglas. Probably reading the part number off that rear gearbox there.
Yeah, I think so. But the other thing you've got to be aware of is, of course, when they come into the pits, yes, they come out with the fresher tyres, and that's going to give them pace. Boyce makes a bit of a mistake there and loses some time on Douglas. But the other thing you've got to be aware of course, you're filling up with fuel. So a lot of that additional performance that you're getting out of having the fresh tyres on is going to be offset by the fact that you're carrying that much more fuel around. So is the undercut going to be worth anything, or is an overcut the way to go? And that's something that we don't actually know. It's a question mark. I would be surprised looking at the lead if Purnell, with the gap that he's got behind him now, didn't actually choose to try an undercut. But whether or not it actually works for him is going to be fascinating to see.
That's what we love about a brand new season, a brand new series in Australian sim racing. We've got so many questions that we just do not know the answers to, and we're finding out all the answers today. And we're very excited to find them out with you guys. So stay tuned and we'll find out. But at the moment, it's still Mick Boyce getting a bit. He's definitely got the pace over Douglas at the moment, even with that mistake through the S's, through 4, 5, and 6. He's closed it back up a little bit, and probably thinking about a second back, and maybe struggling a little bit with a bit of aero understeer off that big rear wing of Douglas's car.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened to him through the S's. Was actually the aero push that has really caused Mick to suffer and run off. And I think that most of the little errors that he's made up behind Douglas have been as a result of those aero changes. Of course, when you've got downforce, it's generating multiple times the actual weight of the vehicle. Of course, when that gets interfered with, it's a huge effect on the way that those cars perform. And if it's not something you're necessarily used to, then it can catch you out. And I think that that's what happened to Boyce last time around. He is starting to peg that gap back on Douglas now, but Douglas has been quite solid in there. He doesn't look overly flustered. He's not making a lot of mistakes. So even though there's a little bit of a pace advantage to Boyce behind, so far he hasn't been able to get the move done, and it's actually costing him in terms of overall performance. So he's really going to have to get on with this now and clear him sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Douglas is an experienced campaigner, certainly not one to crack under pressure, but while we're talking about that aero push and that aero understeer, something quite unique about these Indy cars, of course, they do run in road courses and ovals, and in order to do that, they do run 2 completely different aero kits, and what you can see on the front and rear of the car on these road courses is a multi-element front wing and rear wing, which gives you a lot of downforce. Boyce goes really deep into the last corner off the back straight and almost locked it up, but he did good there, keep it straight. But yeah, a lot of downforce that rear wing and front wing gives you, allows you to corner as high as speed as possible and really get the power down and brake late. But then you go to the speedways and you've got just a single element front wing and rear wing, which does allow you to get up to some very high speeds and it looks completely different on the car, and the two cars handle completely differently, which is something else I have to get used to as well. There's differing levels of downforce between these cars, and just adds another touch of spice to the series.
Yeah, not only that, of course, but they actually run this aero package at the shorter ovals too. So they do have a lot of grip when they go to those short ovals, and that the speed that they're able to carry through the turns there is absolutely mind blowing. But yeah, as you say, on the faster oval tracks, they've got much smaller, much less downforce, much smaller element wings, and it's a whole new ball game. And this spec chassis, this Dallara chassis, handles completely differently, completely different personality running that particular aero package. As we see Boyce now getting right up on the back of Douglas again.
Yeah, one thing that aero package of the Speedways does is it really amplifies that aero understeer. Obviously, there's a smaller pocket of air that your car is going through, but it also means there's less air pushing onto that front wing, which means there's less air pushing that car down. You lose a lot of downforce, and that aero understeer is just even more prevalent. But you do have a lot of slipstream on ovals, which does allow you to close it back up.
Yeah, you certainly do, and that's one of the things that makes this series really good. Is the diversity of circuits. You've got the street circuits, you've got the road courses like this one, and then you've got the ovals. And of course, you've got different length ovals, the shorter, tighter ones, and the faster ones. The super speedway like Indianapolis Motor Speedway will be going there later in the season as well for the big race. And yeah, it's really the champion of this series is going to be the one who masters all of that, not just one particular style of it, not just one or two. You've got to master absolutely every aspect of it and be there every single round if you're going to take this championship. And the guys that you're seeing doing well here might not necessarily do well at the next round, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and certainly we see Gary Hamilton with a 4.5 second lead, absolutely comfortable in this race. But I do wonder when we get to ISM Raceway, I believe is the next race on the calendar, and some of the other speedways, where the guys like Chris Purnell, Dave Douglas, Dornack and Matty Clute and Skurlock can use their overall experience to really get a leg up on the rest of the field.
Yeah, Gary Hamilton's actually just put a lap on Carmichael there. So he's already lapped Adam McCloy, Fitzroy Beaumont, and I believe Scott McClintock and Matthew Cloak, of course, no longer in this race, unfortunately. So it has cut down our numbers a little bit. We didn't have a massive field here to start with. But Purnell now just closing up on the back. He's going to deal with Carmichael next. But then he's going to get fairly well left alone for a while, Carmichael. Oh, Carmichael's actually spun, so that's made Purnell's job a lot easier. Purnell's not had to worry about putting a move on or anything like that. He's just been able to drive past the spun car of Carmichael on the side of the track, and he's got a big gap behind now to James Foster, who's now sitting 16 seconds off the lead.
Yeah, naturally how it goes. The second we stop talking about Mick Boyce and Dave Douglas, there's actually been a change of position. And Boyce has got by Dave Douglas, so he's finally been able to complete that move, and we'll see now whether he's got the pace to drive away from him.
Yeah, and of course now he gets to return serve a little bit in the way of giving Dave Douglas something to think about in terms of that aero turbulence now coming off the back of his car. So he's able to go, look, mate, you can deal with this now. You can deal with that dirty air that I've been dealing with for the last however many laps trying to get past you, and we'll see how you like it.
Yeah, and Dave will have to really adapt quite quickly to this because he spent the last a lot of portion of this race not in anyone's wake, so to say, and he's going to have to adapt to how that car handles in that draft and adapt pretty quickly here, and hopefully he can do that and not have a mistake. But just looking at the field, the rest of the field is really spread out. Obviously, 4.5 seconds to Purnell, 17 back to Foster, and Michael Skurlock's in a world of his own. Mick Boyce and Douglas are still the closest guys on track. Joshua Carl Warden is only 3 seconds behind Luke Lucas, but he's not closing in, and Luke Lucas is quicker than him. And Mirko Dornack on the back of Carl Warden. That's probably the next closest battle on track. He's driving up on the back of Carl Warden, so we'll watch these guys and see whether Dornack can execute a move on Warden.
I think you'll find that Doubtnack's actually already got that move done. So Doubtnack just rounding the last turn, pulling onto the front straight. We do have a car in the pits as well. Just having a quick look to see who that is. I think it might be Luke Lucas. It is Luke Lucas coming into the pit lane. So I'm not sure if he's got a bit of damage on the front of that car. He might be looking to get fixed. He did just have a spin, so his ears are up on the jack, so he might just be looking for a new set of tyres. It is only lap 14, however, but he's taken service anyway, top up fuel, fresh set of tyres, and he will come back out onto the track and keep on going.
All those differing opinions we both heard on the strategy for this race. He said a couple people might be able to make it comfortably on fuel. Maybe Luke Lucas is one of those guys who believes he can make it comfortably and can afford to pit a couple laps earlier and maybe try and perform an undercut. As something has happened to Lucas there. He's very slow coming off turn 1. Maybe just letting our leader Gary Hamilton go past him, but if he was, it's going to hurt him a bit. But he's not going to be in the area wake of Gary Hamilton, and he's cost himself a bit of time getting out of the way as well.
Yeah, it looks like he has. But then again, you kind of have to when the leader comes up behind you, don't you? You haven't really got the option to. I mean, with the greatest respect to him, Luke Lucas is in 8th place. He's a good 15, 16, 17 seconds off the guy in front of him. So saving a 10th here and there by trying not to let the leader by is not really worth it to him. So he's done the right thing there. Right, so where does that leave us? I think we're going to be keeping an eye. Well, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Purnell anyway because I expect him to potentially try the undercut. I think in terms of who's most likely to benefit from such a thing, I think he's probably the guy in the field who's most likely to benefit from trying a strategy like that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him duck in the next lap or so. It's lap 15 now. We were expecting around about 16 lap stints. So we'll see what he actually chooses to do as he comes around the pits this time. He's not quite there yet, but when he does get there, I'd expect to see him peel off. If not this lap, definitely next.
Oh, those top 3 cars are certainly very spread out at the moment, but in terms of lap times, it was actually the 3rd place man, James Foster, was quickest on that last lap with a 47.9, and Chris Purnell 48.0, and Gary Hamilton a 48.1. But he's really upped the pace in that lap, a 47.3 from Hamilton, and only a 48.2 from Purnell, so he's going to stretch that lead out even further now on this lap.
Yeah, Rob, while you're just talking there, Ryan, Rob Carmichael's had another spin. He was just in front of James Foster, actually, or just behind James Foster, and he's actually looped that car around. So Carmichael's decided to come into the pits, nearly takes a piece of that pit wall, actually, as he comes in. So he's obviously had enough of driving around on those tyres, and he's got to get himself a fresh set. Probably well within the window now to actually do that. Yeah, I think he's struggling today. He's having a little bit of a hard race, I think.
Yeah, there's a few guys out there that are certainly struggling. Of course, being the first race of this series, there's probably a bit of inexperience out there as well. Maybe some guys haven't done too much official racing with this IndyCar and might just be maybe their first few times driving this car. So obviously that experience is going to come into play over a longer race with people that really aren't too knowledge updated on the tyre life and how the tyres really wear on these cars. And it looks like Carmichael's actually pulled off and retired from this race, which is a shame. So that's our 3rd retirement from this race. Of course, Scott McClintock has also retired from it too. So that's going to be 3 people now that have had to retire from this one.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, isn't it? You don't like to see people dropping out of the race, especially this early on. But there's a few guys who had little incidents and so on. And honestly, after you pick up a little bit of damage, very difficult to continue if they're unable to repair that. But at the front, at the moment, we've got Gary Hamilton. He's leading by 5.5 seconds over Chris Purnell. We've got Mirko Deltnak. He's in the pits at the moment. He will get a new front wing on that number 62. And I believe he's also going to take all the regular service. In fact, we've got 2 Allusion cars in the lane. I think that might be Boyce, the other one. No, it's Purnell. Purnell's in as well. So we've got a 2nd place driver, Purnell, almost a lap ahead of his teammate, Mirko Deltnak, who is taking service at exactly this point. And I believe our leader, Gary Hamilton's still out there. James Foster in the pits as well. So it's all starting to happen on pit lane now.
Yeah, but we'll see whether this undercut's worth anything to Chris Purnell. Unfortunately, he's probably too far back to really make anything of it. As a very fast pit stop for Purnell there compared to Mirko Deltnak. That's interesting.
Yeah, let's not forget Deltnak's got to be getting repairs.
Ah, yeah. I forgot about that. Oh, no, Purnell's
spun out of the pits. Cold tyres has absolutely done him in. Straight onto the throttle and straight around. So big mistake there from Chris Purnell. And what slight chances he had of catching Gary Hamilton, I think we can honestly say now, barring some sort of catastrophe for Hamilton, have completely gone.
Yeah, Edward, I don't think that undercut's going to work for him, do you?
No, no, I don't. It's a shame because it would have been really good to see how it actually worked out in terms of the timing, but that has well and truly put paid to that.
But crucially for Purnell, he's not lost a spot. James Foster is still about a corner behind him, so he's going to still be comfortably in front of Foster, so no harm, no foul there.
Hamilton in.
We'll see whether
Hamilton in.
Hamilton has responded and pitted.
Yeah, so he's just rolling down pit lane now. There is another car in front of him, which is Joshua Carroll Walden, I believe. But all eyes are going to be on Gary Hamilton to see how he's able to. Well, I mean, barring a catastrophe at this pit stop, he's going to come out well in the lead, and we'll see how he copes with the cold tyres coming out of the pit lane that have caught out so many already.
Yeah, he's hit his marks perfectly there in the pit box. Obviously, we've seen in many races where sighting to the pit box is a bit difficult, as Hamilton's going to have to come up right behind Joshua Carter Walden, and he's not going to be too happy about that. He would have wanted to come out ahead of Walden, but he's not going to be able to do it, and now Walden's going to get out of the way. Nice heads up driving there from the driver of the number 35 car, and he'll get out of the way of Hamilton. Hamilton does not leap it, coming out of turn number 1, and he will go comfortably, still been leading the race, but Carl Walden is now right in front of Luke Lucas for the battle for 8th place.
Yeah, so that's an interesting battle going on. And even Hamilton coming out of the pits there, you just saw the back end of the car get a little bit squirmy on those cold tyres. So certainly it's a big factor for these cars when those tyres are stone cold coming out of the pits together. But as you mentioned, there is that battle going on for 8th place now, Lucas versus Carol Walden. And we're going to get a battle for 2nd place back. James Foster now right back up on the gearbox of Purnell. So that battle that we thought we weren't going to get, Purnell running wide actually, and Foster through. Foster's actually done that, come through on the warmer tyres. In fact, no, they wouldn't be warmer tyres because they pitted on the same lap. But he's just got that move done, and I think Purnell just made a mistake there.
I think the curse of the identically painted Allusion cars is struck again, because that is Mirko Dornak in behind James Foster.
It is too. It is too.
Is up the straight.
Right,
it's actually Skurlock.
It was Skurlock. Okay, so it was Michael Skurlock after all. In fact, no, it wasn't Skurlock.
It was Dornak.
Back. It was Dornak. It was Mirko Dornak.
Our race director's thrown us both off.
Yeah, covering ourselves in glory, but anyway, we've got to have some entertainment out here, don't we? So if we're not going to get very close racing here today, we might actually just entertain in that way.
While that was happening, Luke Lucas made a huge dive on Carol Warden, and unsurprisingly overshot the corner massively, and Carl Warden's able to cut back on him. But now Luke Lucas is going to get a draft down this main straight, going to tuck out very late from behind that Citroen of Carl Warden. If he get it pulled up, he's locked up a tyre though, and he's going to make the apex though. Very good move there for Luke Lucas. He gets run out of the corner, and he's going to take P8 away from Joshua Carl Warden. Good move.
Yeah, very good move. So and we've double checked, and they are definitely the two drivers that we thought they were. So such is the ease given to us when the cars are painted individually.
Yep, I now have a newfound respect for privateers, and I love them because they have unique cars, and you can.
Lucas is spun. Lucas has actually just chucked all his good work away by spinning off the track, and he's actually elected to take a tow there. He's gone straight back to the pits rather than recover, and I think that we may be seeing the end of Luke Lucas.
That's a shame. That would have been a good battle between Lucas and Carl Warden. Did he get into the wall there, or did he just spin off into the grass?
No, he just spun off onto the painted tarmac on the exit of the turn. So it looked as though it would have been something that would have been quite easy for him to just flick the tail around and carry on, but maybe a little bit of frustration creeping in there, I'm not sure. But either way, he's taken the tow back to the pits, and he resides in pit lane at the moment.
That's a big shame. That leaves our closest battle on track being maybe Chris Purnell and James Foster, who are 6 seconds apart.
I think you're right, actually. As far as what we can see anyway on the timing screens, that would be our closest battle. We are losing cars in the back end of the field, which is a little bit disappointing because we didn't start off with a massive field anyway. But what we've got, the race situation as it stands at the moment, we've got Gary Hamilton still in the lead, 16 seconds over Chris Purnell, and that definitely is Chris Purnell. It's nobody else. And James Foster there in third position, 22 seconds away from the lead. And Michael Skurlock a further 8 seconds back from there. And then a further 19 seconds behind Skurlock, we've got Dave Douglas. And Mick Boyst is just 9 seconds behind Dave Douglas. And then Katakazinas, who's the best part of half a minute, actually, off the back of Boyst. So those are your lead lap cars, just the 7 of them.
Well, if you're watching this stream and you want to get involved in the action, you want to be involved in the iCart Series Australia, give Chris Purnell a touch up. Give Allusion Events a call, and they might be able to slot you into this race, because we've certainly got the room for you, and it would be lovely to have a bigger field next time out. And we've got a full season of racing ahead of us. You can still make a good spot in this championship if you get involved for round number 2.
Yeah, and round number 2, of course, should be a bit more popular. I think COTA, not always a favourite amongst the drivers. It's a very much a love or hate type venue. And yeah, it doesn't always draw the biggest crowds. So quite a small field tonight, but very capable drivers that we do have. We've got quality over quantity tonight, I think.
And you're certainly one of those drivers that really loves COTA, aren't you, Edward? Is that a no?
Sorry, you just dropped out there, Ryan.
I dropped out?
Catch what you asked me.
All right. I'm just going to say, so you're one of those drivers that really loves COTA, aren't you, Edward?
Well, I drove it for the first time today. So I have to say I'm yet to build up too much of a relationship with it. Let's keep it that way.
We'll keep it that way? Okay. It's a tricky track to master. Obviously, being 20 corners long, it's very difficult to master every single one of these corners. But we're just watching our leader, Gary Hamilton, and maybe we can talk you through a lap of this race, eh? There's down through 3, 4, and 5, and 6. Big S's section of this track, very difficult to get right. It's all about carrying the momentum through there. Then you got to go up through turn number 7. And I've probably got my corner numbers wrong here. You can correct me if I do, Edward. But up through 8. It's a blind corner, this one. Uphill crest, and you come back down into the hairpin before the back straight. And you really want to set this corner up to get a good run down the back straight, because if you don't, you're going to be in a world of hurt if you've got anyone behind you or in front of you. You're going to lose an absolute ton of time. And you would probably have to sacrifice a bit of that push to pass to sort of defend or make an overtake. But what this back straight is good for here in COTA is slipstreams. Lots and lots of slipstreams. Unfortunately, no one's close enough on the track to get any slipstreams. But hopefully after some more pit stops, we'll get some more action in this race. Or maybe someone's going to have a spin, which I don't wish on anyone, but might close it up a bit. And then down to that double apex right-hander. And then a bit of a triple apex left-hander. Very unique corner, this one. You really don't want to touch those first 2 apex. You want to keep it out wide and then cut back in for the 3rd apex. And then the double apex, turn 17 and 18. You want to hit both apexes. Of course, turn 17. Infamous now for where Max Verstappen was penalised in Formula 1 for overtaking Kimi Raikkonen. All 4 wheels off the track. Whether that was a deserved penalty or not is up to you. And now through turn 20, get a good apex, get a good run onto that main straight. And that's pretty much a lap of COTA. It's a fast lap in the IndyCar, 1:47. And then, of course, turn 1 is an uphill braking zone, so you can brake a lot later than you would expect. And it's quite unique, that run up the hill on a turn of 1, isn't it, Edward?
Yeah, it certainly is. And they've tried to open out the run into the apex as much as possible to try and encourage overtaking there. But just when you were mentioning Max Verstappen and that penalty that he did get, it's very, very Formula 1, isn't it, to build a track which is so almost encourages you to drive off the racing surface because there's just painted concrete everywhere, and then of course throw somebody a penalty for actually doing so.
I'm not sure if we should touch on this. You get me started on those F1 penalties. It's going to be a very long conversation. It's an interesting topic, that one. But we might leave that one alone for now, Edward.
Yeah, we won't talk about V8 Supercars penalties either, okay?
Yeah, no, we won't. Power to them. They do their best, I'm sure, but it's hard to please the thousands and millions of followers all at once, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is and it isn't. You either, if you're going to write stupid rules, you're going to get stupid results.
Yep. Back to that old age-old adage: you play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I guess it applies. Stupid rules, stupid results as well, I guess. But
in any
it looks
event,
like James.
I believe we do have a closing up battle for second place, actually. Although that could
Just
just
going to
be
mention that.
because, yeah, Purnell's just actually lapped a slower car, but I'm fairly sure the gap between Purnell and Foster is down to about 4 seconds now. So that overtake that I falsely reported earlier on could actually yet come to pass. I think that's Josh Carroll-Walden there that's actually just been put a lap down by a second place man, Chris Purnell. So I'd love to see these two get a little bit closer and get stuck into it because I know they love racing one another, and they both got a very similar attitude to wheel-to-wheel combat. So I'd like to get them both together ASAP, if that's okay, boys.
James Foster was half a second quicker on that last lap. We'll see how much quicker he is on this lap. Foster's going to cross the line with a 48.2, and it was a 48.2 for Chris Purnell as well. So, in fact, that gap will stay dead even on that lap. But if Foster can get that gap a little bit closer, maybe get it down to about 2.5 seconds, maybe I would suspect, and then try out that undercut that Purnell tried to do on Hamilton and ruined by spinning.
Yeah, I was just watching Foster as well coming out of turn one, a little bit of a squirm under power as well. So these guys are definitely suffering on their rear tyres. And I wouldn't mind actually asking some of these guys after the race what rear tyre wear was like, because it seems that the rears are getting really hammered around here, whereas the fronts maybe not so much. We're not seeing a lot of understeer in clean air at the very least, but certainly coming out of those slow corners, every driver seems to be just struggling a little bit with their throttle application. So definitely a challenge for them, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be a combination of tyre wear. Been on this for about 7 or 8 laps now, this set of tyres, about halfway through the stint. And of course, these cars, despite all that downforce piled onto that back of that car, there's a lot of power going through these machines and through these engines that there's a lot of power at your disposal. It can be quite easy to just apply a bit too much.
Yeah, Josh Carroll-Walden probably not being necessarily aware that Foster was right up there behind him trying to make a move. Cost him a little bit of time. He jumped out the way as soon as he saw him. And of course, these two actually shared a car in the recent Watkins Glen 6-hour race, Foster and Carroll-Walden. So I guarantee you there's no animosity between them, but it was just one of those things, perhaps a bit of a misunderstanding between the two of them. Cost Foster a little bit of time, but he'll carry on to fight another day, as will Carroll-Walden. But you'd imagine that James has definitely got the bit between his teeth trying to catch Purnell. And just what you were saying about the amount of downforce on the back of the cars, they are running quite a low downforce package here, considering the type of circuit that it is. And also, you've got to remember, coming out of the sharp corners like turn one and some of the other turns there's not a lot of airflow because the cars aren't going that fast. So they're not actually producing a lot of downforce there. At that point. So it's almost as though you're relying a lot on your mechanical grip coming out of those slower turns.
Yeah, that is a good point. This is a fixed setup series, of course, and the admins of the series have chosen to run that low downforce package for this race, and that could be a bit of an attributor to the amount of issues we've seen with people spinning throughout this race, and certainly on those cold tyres. But while we've got a bit of a lull in the action, something we're unable to do due to our delayed start to this broadcast is running through the calendar for this year, in fact. The debut season of the iCart series, which is the IndyCar Australia Racing title, will see them go to 12 different events. Obviously, starting here in Coda, then we head over to Barber Motorsport Park for yet another road course, and then our first oval of the season will be at Gateway Motorsport Park, which will be a cracking race, that one. Detroit. So when I was talking about ISM Raceway is next, forget about that. I don't know what I was on, but I was tripping. It's Barber Motorsport next, people. And then it's Gateway, and then Belle Isle. That'll be an absolute cracking race, that one. Put the Unicars on the street circuit, a bumpy, tight street circuit. It should be an absolute belt of that one. And then we go to the Indianapolis Road Course, the annual lead up there to the big one. Round number 6 on September 8th. If you want to get involved, the Indianapolis 500. That should be the big race. That'll be the crown race of the season. And it's Road America, Pocono Raceway, Mid Ohio, Texas, Homestead, Miami, and then we round off the season in Laguna Seca. And it's a pretty good calendar, isn't it, Edward?
It's a very good calendar, isn't it? A lot of diverse circuits, and they've actually got some really, really good. Of course, road circuits tend to, when people think of racing in the States, they always think of the oval tracks, the NASCAR tracks, the Indy 500, and the stuff that they're really well known for. But they've got some brilliant road course circuits over there in the States. You know, as you mentioned, you've got Road Atlanta, Road America, Watkins Glen, Laguna Seca. They're all fantastic tracks, and they really punish errors as well. They got grass or dirt, gravel right up to the edge of the circuit, so there's never any issues with track limits and things like that, like you might find here in particular, as we were talking about before. But yeah, very good calendar, diverse calendar, and the winner of this series is definitely going to be a worthy winner, that's for sure.
Yeah, there certainly will be. You know what track we should have on this iRacing service? Paul Ricard over in France. There would be absolutely no issue with track limits, would there? Because
Oh no, absolutely not. Yeah, it's. I don't know if anybody's able to detect our sarcasm there, but yeah, it's pretty much about 30 square miles of asphalt with a circuit painted on it these days, isn't it? Wasn't always the case, but it's a bit like that now.
yeah, track's undergone some renovations over the years. Of course, I'm not quite as ancient as Edward, so I'm unable to really remember back the days of the old Paul Ricard. Maybe you could enlighten me, Edward. Was the old circuit a bit better than the new one?
Well, it was a very similar layout, but it actually had things around it. But of course, being such a young modern millennial, I'm sure that you've heard of a new invention called the internet, which will allow you to actually go back and look at these races for yourself.
Maybe back to the race, James. Yeah, okay, very cool, very cool. It's sort of been high on my list of things to look up on the internet. Uh,
Classic motor racing is not high to
classic
look up
motor
on the
racing.
internet. Yes, go back, look at classic motor racing. It's the best thing about the internet.
I
Go
look
back,
at
look at some
Bathurst.
classic motor racing.
I look at the Bathurst races and the old NASCAR races, and I look back at Kyle Busch's winning 2015 championship.
All the way back to 2015.
All the way back to 2015.
I understand that at that stage, you're probably very much still having your pajamas laid out for you. But there was actually an entire century prior to that of motorsport. You should really go back and familiarise yourself with it, because the contrast, let's say, is quite striking.
Was the racing actually exciting back then?
The racing wasn't as close as it is nowadays, I don't think, because they had things were a lot less restrictive, and being able to see a V10, V8, V12 all on the same track together, racing, plus the personalities you would have had back then. You know, in IndyCar racing, you had Emerson Fittipaldi and you had Alonso and AJ Foyt and guys like that. And of course, over on the Formula One side, Senna, Prost, Mansell, Lacey, the list just goes on. So very much well worth a watch. And of course, you'll be able to see the way the tracks have evolved as well.
Well, maybe that's a bit of a nighttime research to do while I get myself ready for bed tonight, eh? Maybe after the F1, during the F1, it'll be that boring. But to update on that battle for a second place, while I've been rabbiting on about anything and everything.
The days of yore.
Days of yore. Chris Purnell has opened the gap back up to James Foster to 4.8 seconds. So he's managed to get that gap back up out there, and James Foster's probably not close enough to be able to execute any sort of undercut on him there. As Dave Douglas and Mick Boyce, they're still 8 seconds apart. Mick Boyce, obviously, with that spin, was unable to stay ahead of Dave Douglas earlier in the race, and maybe just struggling to get back up to him now, which is a shame. Back throughout the pack, let's have a look back now. I can confirm there are still no cars anywhere near each other. It's still the battle between Chris Pennell and James Foster is the closest battle on track. And I'm quite excited to see how this one plays out through the pit stop phase, which should be coming up in roughly about 5 or so laps.
Yeah, you will think that the pit stops are probably going to be, yeah, as you say, coming up quite soon. James Foster certainly not leaving anything on the table. Saw him coming through the S's just then, taking a whole lot of curb. He's certainly trying as hard as he can to get up onto the back of Purnell, but Purnell's got that nice cushion there at the moment. And I think Sam Katakazinas actually just had a bit of a half spin there before, but he's regathered himself and he'll continue on in 7th position, but he's still got a fair gap over the guy behind him. So, yeah, no harm done.
And that is one advantage when you get a long race like this and you get the field spread out just a bit. If you do make a mistake, it isn't the end of the world. You can recover and not lose 300 positions like you might say at the start of an oval race. which is a bit of a bonus there for road course racing. I saw Katakuzinas is very happy for that fact at the moment. Some of the biggest moves in this race. It's been not much passing in this race, in fact. The top three guys, all as they started, Skurlock and Dave Douglas and Mike Boost have all come up one spot on this race from their respective starting positions, and it looks like further back from that, it's actually Fitzroy Beaumont, started from P15 on this one, has come up to 11th. So he's our biggest move in this race, up 4 spots, and Adam McCloy and Sam Katakuzinas both come up 2 spots in this race as well. So they've all done pretty well to gain some spots in this one, and our biggest loser so far, Mirko Dornak, who has started from 4th place, has a pretty good pace in qualifying, but unfortunately he's just not had the race, has he? He's slipped all the way back to 9th place now.
Yeah, of course he was carrying that damage around before, wasn't he? After he had a little bit of contact, and it's just been struggling for a little bit of race pace, a little bit of consistency, I think. But he's certainly not alone in that. But unfortunately, it has cost him in positions where he started up in 4th place. He started on the 2nd row, so I guess you could say that he probably had the longest way to fall of the guys who've had issues so far. So unfortunate for him, but he's still going on there. And if he finishes where he is now, 9th position, it's not a terrible finish. You still get a healthy haul of points for that.
Yeah, exactly. And some of these guys that are retired from this race, maybe not thinking about that long-term goal here. McDonald probably is more so that championship. You want to get as many points as you can. Every point matters, of course. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 11 rounds of this season, and absolutely anyone can make a mistake and crash out, especially on those ovals where it's so close together and almost pack racing, where a big crash can take out quite a number of big names. And if you can manage to get a few decent points on one of your bad days, it could turn out to be the pivotal point in your championship, and you might be able to take it to maybe have a championship win later on in the season.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think in our first ANSCAR series that got run, of course, Performance E-Streaming broadcast all those races for that championship as well. I think the first actual full series that ANSCAR ran, it was something like an average finish of 5th place. If you'd finished 5th in every race of the season, you would have won the championship. So very much about consistency, especially in the scoring, like the point scoring here. I'm not exactly sure on the exact amounts of points for every position, but I know the gaps between them are quite narrow. So it's really going to penalise DNFs and no-shows for races. You can't afford to be walking away from a race with 0 points. You've always got to be there scoring something to give yourself a chance at the end of the season. And that's what a lot of these guys are doing at the moment. There are some drivers out there struck a bit of trouble, but they're continuing on. And that's the reason they're continuing on, to get those points in the bank and come back next race and perhaps have a little bit of a stronger result.
Yeah, I do believe the point system, I think I read, was got my words out here. The point system is the same that they use in Formula 1, I do believe. So the 25, 18, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1 format. So the top 10 finishers in this race all score points, with Adam McCloy to the 10th place would pick up a 1 point, and our race winner Gary Hamilton would pick up that maximum 25-point haul. So Mirko Dornak at the moment, 9th place, pick up 2 points. Which could be pivotal.
Well, don't call Gary Hamilton our winner yet. We've already seen commentators curse once, so let's leave poor Gary alone. He's doing a solid job there out front. It is, in your defence, difficult to see anyone touching him, and the gap behind him, of course, 23 seconds back to Chris Purnell. And the gap
I just
back
cursed Dornak.
Oh,
Dornak
no.
just had a spin at the end of the back straight. Luckily for Dornak, he's not been hit by anyone, and he's kept it off the wall. It's just a little harmless spin there, under braking for that tricky end of the back straight corner there, and he'll go on his way.
He will go on his way, and he's had the new front wing put on, but he's got quite a bit of floor damage on both sides of that car, actually, especially on the right. Got a little bit of damage there to the aerodynamic surfaces around the side pod, which are probably going to be hurting him in terms of outright grip, which could have contributed to that spin a little bit as well. We also don't know, with the damage he had before, does he have any steering offset now? Are the steering a little bit bent? Is there anything like that that's making it a lot more tricky to drive? So he looks to be having a bit of a struggle. It's been a tough race for him, but he's continuing on. And he's on for a couple of points at the moment.
Yeah, unsure that floor damage might have come from. Quite possibly it could be a result of jumping over these curbs here. Obviously, another side effect of having a track with no gravel, no grass on the outside of the track is that you are quite tempted to utilize those curbs and jump over those white lines. And unfortunately, one of the things that can do is it can damage the underside of your car, which can lead to quite a performance loss.
Yeah, it certainly can. And there's no coincidence that the guys who are running first, second, and third in this race, and fourth for that matter, are the guys with the cleanest cars. I can't see any damage on Hamilton, Purnell, Foster, Skurlock. Dave Douglas looks pretty clean as well. And Mick Boyst in behind him, I think, has got a fairly clean looking car. And Katakazinas, who's come up quite a few spots since the start, he's looking quite clean as well. So there's definitely something to be gained by keeping your car nice and clean, keeping your nose clean, as they say.
Quite literally keeping your nose clean. Because you got the nose of the... No.
Just no.
Just no. I need a notepad with some jokes so I can make out the race, because I got nothing. A bit like no one has anything for Gary Hamilton so far in this race. There we go. That was smooth
Big
entry.
way.
There we go. Nothing for Hamilton so far in this race, and all things going well, Hamilton will be quite comfortable out front. Just saving with a fuel, saving with a tyres, just taking it easy. No reason for him to push any harder than he is already. And Chris Purnell continuing to eke out that gap to James Foster as well, and Michael Sculler continuing to have a very, very lonely race in fourth place, but doing what he needs to do so far.
Exactly right. And you've got, of course, as we mentioned, Gary Hamilton out the front. He's led so much of this race. And if anybody watched the latest real life IndyCar race, Alexander Rossi won by around about 35 seconds after leading all but one laps of the race. And in a race where all the cars are fairly well identical, that's a brilliant achievement, and Hamilton looks to be on to at least be trying to emulate that with such a dominant performance here tonight. And of course, all the cars here have the same setup as well, so he's got exactly the same tools at his disposal, as does everybody else who's trailing in his wake at the moment. So he's really doing a very good job. His lap times are very, very consistent. The only time that you actually see them vary a little bit is when he comes up to a bit of traffic or something like that. But he's been very, very consistent in the 47s, 48s throughout, and doing all he needs to do to pick up the winner's share of the points.
Well, now we've both cursed him, so if anything happens, I think we should both just take off, because he's going to be really pissed off at us, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, probably, but we don't have to tell him.
If he makes it this time of the broadcast, you'll certainly find out. But we're just coming up. Gary Hamilton is now on lap 32, so we are at that pit window for that second pit stop, which should be, for most of these guys, we suspect, maybe the second and last stop of this race, unless, of course, some guys are struggling with their fuel. And I've just noticed as well that about 3 or 4 corners up in front of Gary Hamilton is a pack of about 3 lapped cars. Mirko Dortnack, Fitzroy Beaumont, and Mick Boyst. So that could be a bit of a spanner in the works for what's his name? For Gary Hamilton. That's a man leading this race. Bit of a spanner in the works for Gary Hamilton if he catches those guys after this pit stop phase. But bit comfortable for Gary Hamilton with that 25-second lead. He shouldn't be too worried about those guys. I think it's taking nice easy to get past them.
Yeah, I would imagine that Hamilton's probably going to just cruise up to the back of these guys and then duck into the pits, and hopefully do a couple of laps in clean air, which is going to allow him to jump these guys when they go into the pits themselves. Of course, he does have lap speed on all of these guys, which is going to help him accomplish that. He'll be trying to avoid actually going and having to pass these guys on track, I think. It'll be the smart way to do it anyway.
And just touching on that speed from Gary Hamilton, he's the only driver in the field still lapping the 147s.
Purnell in the pit lane.
Yep, Purnell has dived into the pit lane, as is James Foster in behind him, so Foster's going to cover him off and not allow him to gain any advantage from some sort of undercut. And we'll see if Chris Purnell can manage his tyres well coming out of turn 1 and hopefully not loop it around, because if he does this time, he's going to be in real trouble and in real threat of being overtaken by James Foster.
Yeah, he's not going to make that mistake again, is he? He's too good to make that mistake twice. So I don't think that we're going to see him loop that car. They both had spins coming out of turn 1 now, so I think that they're probably going to avoid that. As Purnell leaves the pit lane, Foster coming out as well, so we'll just keep an eye on them just to make sure that they both managed to get themselves out. Purnell very, very ginger out of turn one. He's learned his lesson, hasn't he? And he's actually got a teammate in there behind him, Michael Skurlock, who has just jumped James Foster for the time being, but Skurlock has not come to the lane as yet. So we're not going to get much racing for that position either, because I imagine that Skurlock is going to be in the pits within a lap or two.
Yeah, for sure. And as I was saying, Hamilton, the only driver lapping in the 47s, and in fact, the lap before that, he actually did a 46.4. He is absolutely flying. Chris Purnell, for comparison, our second place man, his last almost 10 laps all been in the 48. So that's just how much quicker Hamilton is, and it's unsurprising when you see that to realise that he's going to have a really big lead.
Yeah, he's moving, isn't he? And even the lap cars aren't slowing him down. He's catching them in convenient places. He just managed to sail past that particular piece of lap traffic. I think it was Fitzroy Beaumont there that he's gone past on the main straight, and Beaumont's just got out of the way, and no inconvenience to Hamilton whatsoever. So all going perfectly well, smoothly for him at the moment. And he's going to be hoping that that keeps up for another, how many laps is it? Another 14 laps. It's all going to be done with.
That's the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? When you've got a nice, comfortable lead and you're all by yourself, you've got no pressure whatsoever, you'll catch those laps cars in exactly the right spot, no issues whatsoever. But when you've got a bit of pressure and you're under a lot of stress to try and pump in those lap times, you'll catch those lap cars in exactly the wrong places. That's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, when it's your day, and it definitely looks as though it's Gary Hamilton's day, although we don't want to put the mockers on him, but I think it would take some kind of supernatural curse to slow him down at the moment. He's absolutely flying, and as things stand with him not having come to the lane as yet, he now has a minute lead over Chris Purnell, 105 over Skurlock, who is actually in the pits as we speak. That will promote James Foster back to third position, and he's going to be able to pit. I reckon he could pit twice and still come back out, in the lead.
Yeah, he certainly could. Just looking further back for that, because obviously Michael Skurlock currently in the pit lane. We'll watch him coming out of the lane and see whether he can prevent himself from making the mistake of his teammates that have made today. Mirko Dorna, Chris Purnell, both having spins, but Michael Skurlock, very experienced, gets that paddock nice and smoothly, and he'll make his way down through turn number 2. Steady as she goes. Bit of a twitch there next to turn 2, but all good for Michael Skurlock.
Yeah, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, Michael Skurlock, whether he's on the ovals or on the road courses these days. I remember his early days when he started in ANSCAR. Even in those early days, he was very consistent. Now he's got the speed to go with it, so he's very reliable. If you had to put your house on somebody not to mess up and just hit those apexes all day long, Michael Skurlock would be very close to the top of that list.
Well, it certainly wouldn't be you, would it?
No, absolutely not.
And Gary Hamilton might have just missed his pit pay there.
Yeah, it looks as though he got his pit stop done all right, but he just got a little bit of a twitch up getting the throttle down out of that turn 1. So managed to catch it. So that's the only little blip on his performance this afternoon. It wasn't really a blip at all.
Yeah, he's comfortable. He's heading up around, getting towards the back straight now, and Chris Purnell's entering turn number 1. So he's got almost half a track on Purnell at the moment. Minute and 1 second lead still.
Yeah, those times will reset as they come across the line this time. But I still think it's going to be around about the 30 second mark. He's commanding lead either way you want to slice it.
So what are your thoughts over
that battle between what we got, Purnell and Foster for second place, and it's still 6 seconds between the two of those.
We're about 13, 14 laps out from the end of this race. It's been a race of attrition, this one so far. What are your thoughts on it? And do you reckon maybe, what do you think for the rest of the season? Are you excited for the rest of the season? We're going to see some exciting racing, or?
I definitely am, especially the ovals. I think we're going to get some really close racing there. It's going to be good to see some of the guys who are more road course specialists getting taken out of their comfort zone. And of course, even the guys who are used to ovals, the Indy cars are a completely different beast from the stock cars that a lot of these guys drive week in, week out. So I'm looking forward to that. I think if we can get gain a few numbers in terms of the actual field sizes, I think that we're going to get some really good racing on the road courses as well. As you say, this has been a race of attrition. It's been very much about not making any mistakes and just ticking those laps off without damaging the car or making any errors. And it's no surprise at all that the guys that we've seen the least number of errors out of tonight are those ones running in those very top positions.
Yeah, I'm excited as well for the rest of the season. I'm really looking forward, like you said, to the ovals, and it should be a good race. I'm looking forward to calling it for you guys as well, and looking forward to some. One thing you get with ovals is almost a guarantee for close racing because there's only 1.5 miles of space for these guys to fit onto. So no matter what way you slice it, they're going to be close together on track, which always produces some great exciting action.
Yeah, not only that, of course, you've got full course cautions as well. So, if somebody does make a mistake, they have a spin or whatever, pace car comes out, everybody bunches back up behind the pace car. They get any wrecks cleared away, everyone gets in, gets new tyres, then they all go again, and it's just like having the race start all over again. And it does make for some very exciting racing. But of course, that's the beauty of the championship. We're saying at the start of this race, it's different skill sets. It demands different things of you. This particular race has demanded long concentration span, accurate driving, solid, consistent applications of the brakes and the throttle, managing your tyre wear, managing your fuel load, managing your pit strategy, and then we'll head off to an oval. And it's going to be all about how you run around other cars and things like that. So that's why it's going to be such a good all-round challenge for everyone taking part.
And that's what makes IndyCar one of the most diverse and one of the most exciting categories on the planet right now, because a lot of these other categories struggle a bit for their excitement. But IndyCar, they seem to produce the most exciting races, don't they? These IndyCar.
Yeah, IndyCar's going through a real golden period at the moment. They had a really good period as well, sort of towards the early '90s through most of the '90s. They had another really golden period, but of course, so much racing across the world was great in that particular era. But then, of course, there was the kart IRL split, which really dampened both series badly, and now they're back reunited as IndyCar. They've got a lot of very exciting drivers and teams in that championship, and it is really one of the best series to watch and follow. It's hard to follow here in Australia and New Zealand because the races are all on at the early hours of the morning because it's American time. But they often, IndyCar will upload the full races to YouTube and everything, so you can catch the full races for free, engage with their fans very well, and it's really one of the best series on the planet at the moment for sure.
And that's why I'm excited for this series to be back in Australian. Back in Australian sim racing, because we haven't seen an IndyCar league in Australian sim racing for as long as I've been on our racing, which was getting over about a year and a half now. And I'm not quite sure when the last time we saw an IndyCar league, but it's been a while, and it's long overdue to see one back in action.
Yeah, Australian Speedway League ran one a while ago. One of the things that they had, it was sort of capitalising on the hype that came about when this IR18 Dallara got released. Because of course before we had the DW12, which was the car that they ran in IndyCar, and of course this is the IR18, which is basically a new aero package on the DW12 chassis. Not a lot has changed in that regard. But with the hype that came about when this car was getting released, they released it around about the time of the Indy 500 as well, I believe. There was all the hype around that and everything else. So it was a very popular car. There was a league that capitalised on that and did have a fairly good run. I competed in one of the races myself, and it was quite good fun, but unfortunately it didn't continue. So it's really good to see a series pop up like this, and it'd be great to see it grow and grow in this region for sure.
While we were just talking about that, Michael Skyker, one of the most innocuous spins I've ever seen. Almost spun him around the corner. Very convenient for Scott there, but much is the story with the rest of these spins in this race. No harm, no foul for Skylock there. He keeps on his way.
Yeah, just almost a little bit of Tokyo Drift style, I think, just getting around there. But he's gathered that up and he'll continue right along. He's under no danger from behind. Dave Douglas, the next car back behind him, who's over half a minute behind him. And then we've got Skurlock himself is 1 minute and 10 seconds off the lead. The gap from first to second, we were keeping an eye on that, weren't we, as the pit stop cycled through, and that was 32.8 seconds. And then, of course, we've got that 6-second gap that just seems to be holding between second and third place. And definitely second and third is the closest battle, if you can call it that, on the track at the moment with that 6-second margin.
Yeah, and I think the next closest is probably Dave Douglas and Mick Boyce. Unfortunately, I can't quite see what the exact gap is due to Boyce being a lap down and Hamilton being sandwiched in between the pair of them. But I can tell you that Dave Douglas is coming out of that final corner now. Hamilton right in behind him. Mick Boyce now just entering the final corner there. So it's the next closest battle on track. And if Douglas doesn't make a mistake, he's going to be under a lot of pressure from Mick Boyce for that 5th place.
Well, this battle's been sort of running all race, hasn't it, to one degree or another. It looks as though these guys have become separated. But if you remember earlier on, Boyce was putting a whole lot of pressure on the back of Douglas, made a couple of mistakes, eventually got that done. But now Douglas finds himself back in front of Boyce. And yeah, it just remains to be seen whether or not he's able to close that gap up. I'm not 100% convinced he is going to be able to, because it is quite a few seconds, but anything can happen. We've got our leader, Gary Hamilton, just coming up to lap Dave Douglas at the moment, put a lap on him, and Dave Douglas running in 5th place and getting lapped. That just shows you how dominant Hamilton's been this afternoon.
Yeah, it really does. And it may not be the most exciting race in terms of the lead in terms of the battle for the win, but you've really got to hand it to Gary Hamilton. Like, to be able to come out with a fixed setup series and hold a 35-second lead with still 10 laps to go is truly outstanding, and a testament to the ability of this car.
Yeah, it's one of the things about motorsport, isn't it, that people don't tend to appreciate dominant performances as much as they do in other sports. I mean, everybody celebrates watching somebody like Roger Federer or Nadal or somebody like that dominate their sport and, you know, just set all these records and so on. But we don't seem to appreciate it so much in motorsport. But really, at the end of the day, the key word is sport. It's sport. And if you are a lot better than everybody else, you're going to win by a lot. The amount that you win by should be representative of your superiority over the competition. So if it's close, that's great. That's really interesting for all of us. But if it's not, you've got to take your hat off to the guy who's out the front winning by a huge margin. And Hamilton has made everybody else today look second rate. He really has. He's just absolutely taken off. He's 35 seconds nearly in the lead now. And we've only had 39 laps. So he's been about a second a lap on average, just under a second a lap faster per lap than Chris Purnell. And Chris Purnell is not a slow driver in anything that he steps into. So let's not downplay the performance that Hamilton's actually put on. It's been a masterclass, and you've got to tip your hat to him for that.
Well, we've seen dominant performances across every motorsport category in the world at some point in their lifetimes, and certainly in Formula One at the moment, it's Lewis Hamilton, and now Gary Hamilton. Maybe some sort of relationship there, maybe distant cousin, distant relative. Maybe that might explain his dominant performance today.
Yeah, it certainly could be. It certainly seems to be the way that the Hamilton clan around the world are going about their motorsport, that's for sure.
Something I've just noticed too, I've been heaping the praise on Gary Hamilton, is that James Foster with a 48.5 has just closed in by 9/10 to Chris Purnell, and the gap now sits at about 3.9 seconds. So he's brought that down. He's almost half that gap. So we'll see whether we can keep closing that one.
Yeah, it was sitting steady at 6 seconds for so long, wasn't it? So I'm not sure if James is maybe using a few of those push-to-passes as he comes onto the straights to try and get that down. I'm just having a quick look at the lap times, actually, to see if there's been any great variation. I mean, James hasn't changed his lap times too much. His last lap was a quick one, but it wasn't massively quicker than any of the other laps he's been doing. So I'm thinking perhaps that Purnell's made a little bit of an error. And just the last couple of laps, he's been in the sort of mid to high 49s, where James in the last couple of laps has been to sort of the mid to high 48s. So it's just been just maybe that Purnell's either made a couple of small errors, or maybe that he's just starting to lose a little bit of pace out of that car at the moment, which could be accounting for the speed difference. But if this carries on, we might get a little bit of a battle before this race is over. We've got 8 laps to go.
And just looking at the gap now, visually it looks to have definitely closed on this lap too. Chris Burnell 37.9 off, and now James Foster 40.8 off, so he's now 2.9 seconds behind him. So he's certainly closing, and yeah, Chris Burnell again does a 49.7 on that lap. So with all due respect, a pretty slow lap for Chris Burnell there, and James Foster 9 tenths quicker.
Yeah, he's not just edging up, is he? He's slashing that gap down from 6 seconds to just under 3 in 3 laps. So he's around about a second a lap faster now. So if he can repeat that in the next couple of laps, we're going to have a grandstand finish for second, and there may just be a little bit of a sting in the tail of this race yet.
That's what we love motorsport, isn't it? There's always something right there that right at the end, at some point, that just spices it up. There's always something in motorsport. And it looks like this is what we're going to get today. Chris Burnell and James Foster, the battle for second place. Maybe a bit of an issue for Chris Burnell. Is it his tyres? Is he maybe... I know Chris was one of those guys that was telling me that it was going to be quite close to the field, so maybe Chris is a bit close to the field and a bit worried about that, or maybe it's his tyres. Maybe he's just getting a bit tired in that rig and losing concentration, losing focus, and not applying himself as much as he could be.
Yeah, I'm just trying to have a look at their top speeds to just try and figure out whether or not Purnell may have switched to another fuel map. It doesn't look as though he's really struggling for pace on the straights. He's fairly comparable with what James Foster is doing. In fact, he was around about 5 k's an hour faster at the end of the back straight than James was. So certainly no issues there at all. So I'd be surprised if he's saving fuel. So I think it's probably a tyre issue. Just trying to have a look at the various apex speeds coming through the last corner. Purnell just getting down to about 97 k's an hour. Foster about the same. So,
yep.
Yeah, about the same. So it's difficult to see where he's actually making that time up. And that being said, it has held steady, this gap at around about, it's just under 2 seconds now.
Yeah, both of them putting in almost identical lap times over the 48.9, so Purnell able to slash about 8 tenths off his lap times there, so maybe he's just sort of realised that he's maybe losing focus a bit, and James Foster's edging close on his mirrors and just forcing himself to focus a bit harder on this one. And meanwhile, 4 cars on the lead lap, there's 3 cars lap down, 8th place is now 2 laps down, which is simply sensational.
Yeah, it's quite a margin, isn't it? But just back on the back, it could have well been that Purnell was just having to back off a little bit to get his fuel numbers the right side of the calculation, and now he's got those numbers back. He's a bit happier with them. He knows he's going to have enough, so he's been able to turn the engine up and go again, because they were lapping almost identical times before, and then he had those couple of slow laps there. So let's actually see what it's like at the end of this lap, whether or not the gap has come down a little bit further. But it could have just been that Purnell's
gone!
Purnell's
he's
off!
Gone! He's going to miss the fence, but he's had a spin off the exit of the corner, and that's disastrous for for Chris Purnell. And I was just going to mention that the last 2 corners, James Foster was about 10 kilometers an hour faster than Purnell, and that's just ruined it for Purnell. He's all that good work from this race, second place with almost the entirety of this race, and maybe it was his tyres then that was just almost giving up on him.
Yeah, you can definitely see as he came through the turn before, the car's just under brakes. It's just taken a little bit of a wobble in the rear. And as the fuel burns off in these cars, they do get a little bit tail happy. And it's normally something that you correct by adjusting the bars. But this is a fixed setup race, so they can't do that. So he's just taken a little bit of a bobble through the corner there, got up on the curb, tried to catch it. It's just gone straight to the scene of the accident, unfortunately for him. And very, very easy to do, but he will be absolutely filthy with himself with that. Purnell sets a very, very high standard for himself and his team, and he will not be happy with that at all. He'll be beating himself up about that for quite a long time, but you can guarantee now that he is going to throw caution to the wind, pedal to the metal. He just gets a little bit of a twitch out of that turn as well, and will be trying to pull up back up onto James Foster again.
Well, he can certainly afford to. He's got about 50 seconds back to the 4th place car behind him, so he can afford to really thrash the car now. And if he has a bit of a spin trying to close the gap back up to Foster, it's not the end of the world, because like I said, Skylock is an absolute light year behind him. But I'll be interested to hear from Purnell on the post-race interview here and see what exactly was the issue for him.
Yeah, I can only think, looking at that spin, I mean, we did talk about whether it was tyres, whether it was a bit of fuel saving, what it was. I think looking at that, it had to be tyres. It just, the way that the cars just sort of twitched and locked up under brakes there, and the fact that he wasn't able to catch it as well, I think is more telling than anything else. The fact that, I mean, under normal scenario, you know, on a new set of tyres, if that car got away from him a little bit, just sort of stepped out, you'd catch that and you'd go straight on. But he had multiple stabs at catching that car, and he wasn't able to catch it on any of them, which indicates to me that he was suffering from a major lack of grip.
Yeah, it certainly does. I'm just seeing his first lap back with a full pace there. It's a 49.2 for Foster, so his pace has slowed dramatically. And Chris Purnell has done a 48.0, so he's dramatically quicker than James Foster again. So the pace advantage swings in roundabouts here, and it's back to Chris Purnell, and he's might just be able to get back onto the back of Foster here for the end of this race.
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that James is fairly confident defensively, so I think he may be, now that he's actually got that position he was chasing, he may just be settling himself down, looking after those tyres, making sure that he's not going to have the same sort of issue that Purnell had. And he's not really going to be that concerned if Purnell does manage to work his way up there. He'll be hoping that Purnell takes even more out of his tyres trying to catch him, of course running in that dirty air as well. But what might actually prove to be a little bit of a spanner in this one, look at the next car up ahead of Foster. Look at the next car up there. It's Mirko Doutnak who's going to be lapped, and that is an Allusion car. So will they play any team tactics here? Will Mirko try to help his team leader recover that second place or not?
Well, it should be interesting, of course. This isn't NASCAR, which is Illusion guys are used to, where the blue flags aren't really, well, they don't exist. The blue flags do exist in IndyCar, and you have to respect them, but with the two that Dornack can tactfully sort of maybe get in Foster's way a little bit, but he might not even need to, because Chris Purnell is roared onto the back of James Foster. He's almost there.
Yeah, he is. He's really just absolutely scythed that gap back down, and I would say just visually that it's only roughly a second right now. So, of course, we've got push to pass as well, which is going to come into play. So we're just going to have to see how this turns out. Purnell seems whatever was going on with him when he was in front of Foster, it's not happening now, is it? He's really managed to just sort out whatever that issue was, and he's really coming at him. So James finding himself in a little bit of a stressful scenario here. He's got an Illusion car ahead, Illusion car behind. He just struggled to put the power down a little bit out of turn one. As we've seen so much, he's got Purnell absolutely breathing down his neck. Doutnak straight out the way, lets them both go. So fair play to him. I think maybe Purnell would have wanted a little bit of help there from his teammate, but either way, that particular piece of danger is over. It's going to come down to a straight fight between the two of them.
Yeah, Purnell really closing the gap down through the S's. See if he can get a run through these two corners here and turn himself up for a run down the back straight. Use push to pass, use slipstream, try and get down to the inside of Foster. No doubt if he does get close enough, we'll see Foster throw some defensive moves down the back straightaway. Foster with a good exit. Purnell with a good exit too. Is really close now. He's right in the slipstream. He should be close enough to make a move. He's got push to pass as well. Down the back straight they go. They look to get closer and closer to the end of the back straight. Getting down to into the corner. Purnell closing. Can he get close enough? He looks to the inside, but he can't get there. He's going to drive it out wide, try and cut back, but he's not quite close enough. He needs to be about a car length or two closer next time by, doesn't he? Unless he can get the move done here. Oh, so closer, side by side as they go through the triple apex. Left-hander, Purnell's on the outside. He's going to try and cut back to the inside. Is he? Yes, he's going to try and do it. He's going to get the power down, but it's still Foster. But now Foster's got the inside, and Purnell's on the wrong side of the track, and Foster's going to hold him off for now. But a good run for Purnell. Sits back in behind him now to go through turn 19.
And James will not be worried about this at all. He's very, very calm in defensive scenarios. And he'll just be hitting his apexes and getting down the throttle as much as he can. He's not going to be too worried about what Purnell does. And if Purnell gets by, I don't think he's going to be that upset about it. But he would prefer to finish second rather than third. But we haven't seen him throw one single block as yet. Definitely been close enough to actually think about actually taking a defensive line in some of these turns, but we really haven't seen it from him. So it's coming down to the last laps now. We're on lap 46. There's only 3 to go, isn't there? So we'll see what happens. But I will be asking Purnell over the race, where was this pace 5 or 6 laps ago when James was catching on you a second a lap? Where was it all? Because he's got it now. So why? It doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't.
No. Or maybe it wasn't the case, Tars. Maybe it really was just his concentration lapse and that spin really kicked it back into gear as he gets really close there. He's going to take a really wide line, take a late apex, get the power down, and now he's closer. He's closer than he was last lap. He should be there this lap. I said it last lap. I'm going to say it again. He should be close enough, and he really is. He's in the draft. Foster looks down to the inside, but Pernell goes even closer to the inside. They're all the way down the left-hand side of the track as they look down to get down into the corner. Foster goes back to the racing line, trying to set up himself up to get a good run through the corner, but Pernell's going to park it on the apex. Foster's going to try and hang on around the outside, and he does. Now he's got the inside for the corner, and he's going to take the position back away from Chris. Pernell's going to try the switch back, and there's almost contact. And now Foster's on the inside for the triple left-hander. He's still got the position away from Chris Pernell, and Pernell can't get the move done, but he's still to the outside, but he's on the wrong side of the track once again, and Foster holds him off for another lap.
What quality driving for the pair of them. I'm surprised that I think that Pernell used a push to pass there. I don't think James did. I don't know why. That would have seemed like the perfect opportunity to actually use a push to pass to defend, but he made it very, very easy for Pernell to drive up alongside him. And then we're going to see the same sort of thing here, I think. Pernell right up behind him. Maybe Foster trying to make Pernell use up all his push to passes. Certainly not shy of throwing the defensive line here. And driving right up the inside, taking a completely different line there, but he's stuffed that up, quite frankly. And Pernell's got badly on the power there, and it just seemed to just hold him up a little bit, but Pernell has got that move done now.
You talked about James Foster's defensive nuance, but that was a huge misplay from Foster there. He was all the way down the inside of the track. Once Pernell went to the right-hand side of the track, I think Foster definitely could have eaten the car back to the right a bit and really tried to open up his eye as much as he can. Instead, he kept it all the way to the left, and he was never going to hold that position off the exit there.
No, he gave himself too much work to do, didn't he, in terms of turning such a tight angle. It's so tight, that first turn. But we'll see now if James can do anything about Pernell. He doesn't look like he's given this up, does he? But he spun. James has lost it, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
There, he's actually spun that around. So that's put paid to that battle for second place. It's as you were. And that really takes the... after a good bit of racing between the two of them, it's disappointing to see it finish like that.
Yep, it's disappointing, but James Foster will still come home in third place, all things well and good, and Michael Skullock, I think, may have had a spin during all that, because he's now a lap down as well. There's only 3 cars on the lead lap. Gary Hamilton has begun the final lap. He's going through the S's. He has a 48-second advantage over Chris Pernell. It's probably the better part of 50 seconds out after that exchange of positions on that last lap, and, well, what can you say other than simply outstanding performance from Gary Hamilton?
Yeah, he'll be enjoying this last lap, won't he? He's under no pressure whatsoever, and there's nothing better than that, is there? You're leading the race, you're miles ahead, you've got no pressure at all, and you're just really just rolling at home. That's all you're trying to do, and the world just seems like a perfect place on days like this, and I'm sure it feels like that in the cockpit of that 111 right now.
Yep, he could dive in pit lane on this last lap and still win this race, but I would highly advise against it. As we're going to see him come through the last few sections of this track, it is a 50-second gap that he has over Chris Pernell. And it's been almost a lights to 5 victory. We saw Pernell get out in front of him off the very start of this race, and he was able to hold him off for a number of laps, but in the end, Hamilton, his pace shone through and he got back into the lead of this race, and he's never looked back.
No, he hasn't, has he? And just mentioning that, I remember Michael Schumacher once winning a race from the pit lane by doing exactly that. But no need for Hamilton to try any of that trickery. He's going to come across the line, dominant victory in dominant fashion, a points lead. It doesn't get any better than that. Fantastic drive from Gary Hamilton. And he'll be well pleased with that, and rightly so. There's almost nothing he could have done better.
Well, at the start of this race, we don't know who the 4th man is. We don't know who's got the pace in the IndyCar. We don't know who could be the winner of this race. Well, I think we know our answer. Gary Hamilton is the man to beat in the IndyCar, certainly on the road courses. And the rest of the field has got a lot of catching up to do, because that was next level.
Yeah, it certainly was. I'm just watching Pernell now, basically cruising in for his 2nd place. He'll be happy with that after the mistake that he made early on. I think that from the beginning, after Hamilton got past Pernell, 2nd place was the best he was going to manage from there, and he's achieved that. He's beaten everybody else but one, so he's going to be fairly satisfied with that finish, I think, coming across the line in 2nd place. And after this, it's just James Foster. He's coming out of the last turn now. He's going to come across the line in 3rd, and that is all our lead lap cars across the line.
Yep, that's the last of our finishers. That's everyone finished this race. So, Edward, would I see the final finishing order for this one?
Oh, right, absolutely. So, as we mentioned, Gary Hamilton, dominant victory. He can be out of the car having himself a drink before these guys have even come around for their final lap. But Gary Hamilton, first position, commanding victory ahead of Chris Purnell. James Foster, with that late spin, ended up finishing in third place. Then Michael Skurlock, solid as always, fourth position. Dave Douglas, he'll be happy with fifth, I think. Mick Boyce, he's there in sixth. Then we got Sam Katakazinas, made his way up to seventh, although 2 laps down. Josh Carroll Walden and Mirko Doutnak here. He was in the wars earlier on, wasn't he? Comes home ninth. Adam McCloy, solid finish for him there in 10th. Fitzroy Beaumont come home 11th. And then we got the retirements: Luke Lucas, Rob Carmichael, Scott McClintock, Matthew Clute, and Kevin Bomford, who never took the start.
Yeah, well, I guess it's hard to dissect a race like that because the key takeaway obviously is Hamilton dominant as ever, runs on the Hamilton name, and he was untouchable. And there wasn't really much to dissect from the rest of the race. There wasn't too many battles. Obviously, we saw the battle between Dave Douglas and Mick Boyce for a number of laps, and that sort of petered out. And then obviously Chris Bennell and James Foster again, probably the biggest talking point aside from Gary Hamilton for that one.
Yeah, I think so. That battle for second place really came alive there at the end, and I'm still mystified as to why Purnell had such a lack of pace and then suddenly gained that pace back after the spin. It doesn't really make a great deal of sense unless there was something going on in that car that for some reason was fixed by spinning off. I really don't understand it. So hopefully we'll have a few guys pop into the green room fairly soon, and we'll be able to get some interviews and we'll be able to ask those kind of questions. I'm hoping to see our winner come in as well, because obviously always good to get a word from the man who dominated the race.
Yeah, hoping Gary Hamilton is able to jump into the green room there. Hopefully he has the Discord open, but he's taking a very slow cooldown lap right now after burning it down. So while we wait for Gary Hamilton, why don't we grab our second? Well, he's not up there. Why don't we grab our third place finisher, James Foster, into the booth, eh?
All right, no problems at all. We'll grab James in.
James Foster, Ryan Jones, our present performance, he's streaming booth. Congratulations, mate. You're going to come away with P3 today. Do you reckon you might have been able to get second place there in the end, or was it just too much for you?
No, I think it was on the cards. Both of us were borderline with fuel. So we were both managing that towards the end. He was managing it for a bit, that sort of let me close up to him, and then I started backing off, and then after his spin that gave me track position, I backed right off, so to sort of give myself some breathing room, and was planning to manage it from there. But yeah, still something I got to master under power. Like, it's so easy to do. Obviously, I did it twice in the race. I mean, I'm not going to be too hard on myself. I only really started practicing this yesterday, so after I do some more practice and get used to it and everything, I'm sure it'll come to me. But yeah, it was just a bit disappointing, but I'm more competitive than I thought I'd be, and P3 is a good result.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a well-driven race, and it's hard to say that because, well, you were just so far off Gary Hamilton, and nothing against you, of course. That came out wrong. But Gary Hamilton, our race winner today, was on a really next level. And do you reckon maybe you've got anything for him? Or was that just down to lack of practice, or what was it? Do you know?
I always like to believe that I can. I've got 2 arms and 2 legs like him, so I believe with more practice, he's not unbeatable. Obviously, he drove a great race. I was a bit, it's a bit demoralising to hear the leader pit after you, meaning that he was able to save fuel while making the gap. But it could have turned out very differently if I stayed with him in the first stint. But yeah, I definitely have some work to do to be able to match his pace. He's definitely got a gap at the moment.
Well, hopefully you can put some work in and get that gap closed down. Edward, you got any questions for James?
Just one. just regarding, well, two actually. First of all, you were saying that seeing the leader pit after you was a surprise. So you were running all the way to the end of your tank, both stops. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely maximising it. So I was like just the default iRacing fuel estimate was really pretty accurate. So I was able to, like, with 1.5 laps of fuel left, I was able to do one more lap knowing that I'd be able to make it. And yeah, I was really just draining it every single stint. So I was expecting, after testing, to have plenty of fuel left, but it didn't work out that way.
Okay, just in the last battle that you had there with Purnell, because there are a couple of times when he got right up behind you and sort of went and sort of made time on you on the straight, and then you were able to sort of hold him off through the turns. But it looked as though that he was using the push to pass. Were you also on the push to pass at that stage?
No, I didn't use it at any point. Like a couple of times early in the first stint, I was using it, and I was planning to use it if I felt that, but because of our fuel situation, I didn't want to use it because it was going to put myself in a bad situation. But if he did get through, it was all sort of a mind game about fuel usage because I knew he was at the same level as me. So I was planning to use it on that straight that I spun. But yeah, it was really touch and go with fuel. So it was, yeah, it made it really interesting and really, really tough.
All right. Well, congratulations on the third place anyway. Certainly a very solid start to your particular season. And we'll be looking to see how you go next round. But what we might actually do in the meantime is we might actually get Chris Purnell in, our second place driver. Haven't seen Gary Hamilton show up yet for his interview. So we might grab in Chris Purnell. Chris Purnell, second place today. What did you make of it, all in all?
Yeah, it was interesting. Probably a little bit disappointed with the amount of cars that showed up. I expected a couple more. The race itself was pretty good. Once the pack spread out, but it was pretty sort of run your own pace sort of thing. Yeah, so it was interesting.
Well, one of the things that we just spoke to James Foster, obviously, who you had that great battle with there at the end. And one of the things that he was talking about was fuel saving. And we were trying to figure out why you lost all that pace. James Foster was able to get up to you, then you had that spin, and then all of a sudden, after you had that spin, your pace was back. Now, was that to do with the fuel?
Yeah, so part of it was fuel. I could see that James was hunting me in a little bit before the previous stop, so I knew he had pace early. So I was kind of managing tyres, so I had some grip there at the end to sort of, if he did get up to me, fight back. And I was a little bit distracted with a few other things going on in the channel with the team and stuff like that. So it was just all sort of not exactly going my way. And then I made that error and I spun and I thought, shit, I'm going to have to do something here. So I put my foot into it and yeah, managed to catch back up to James. But the other thing that I got lucky with is I saved a lot of my push to passes. So I was able to use them near the end to catch back up quite quickly.
Yeah, James was saying that he only used 2 push to passes in the entire race, and he was sort of loath to use any more because of the potential extra fuel usage to come about by using those. So was that something that was in the back of your mind at all?
Yeah, it was. But the way I kind of did it was I saved a lot of fuel in that middle stint, so I could kind of have that little bit of fight power at the end if I needed to, and it kind of turned out that I did. And it worked out in my hand really. So I'm pretty.
All right. And what have you got to do to catch Gary Hamilton?
Quite a bit, to be honest with you. He's pretty impressive, to be honest with you. He seems to be a bit like another Martin and Danson from Anscar, so I'm going to have to find something to close the gap. We'll see how he goes on an oval in a couple of weeks' time, but yeah, the road courses, he's got something definitely.
All right. So we might just hand you over to Brian Jones now, see if he's got any questions for our second place getter.
I think you pretty much covered it all, Ed, but maybe one. At the start of the race, Chris, you were able to get out in front of Hamilton. Were you sort of hoping to hold him off the entire race, or did you expect that he was going to be able to gap the field sort of thing?
From what I could see in practice, I knew he had pace. So the best opportunity I had was at the start to try and hold him up. But that first lap when he was drafting me down the back, I knew he was going to have a look, and he did, but he sort of pulled out of it. He didn't lunge down there. But then the second one, he kind of just fired it in there, and I sort of had to open the wheel up to let him in. And then, yeah, by that stage, he'd sort of got better grip off the exit. And that was it. He was gone, and there was no looking back from there for him.
Yeah, he pretty much showed a flawless race, and unfortunately, he just got on the pace tonight. But hopefully, you can claw it back next week. Evia, before I let you go, any shout outs, thank yous, anyone out there?
I'll give a shout out to the boys in Allusion Motorsport. It's been a lot of fun with them lately, working with different stuff and trying different race cars and stuff like that. So that's been a lot of fun. Obviously, you guys up in the booth at Performance Day Streaming for putting on the broadcast for us, and I'll thank myself because I've put all this together over the last sort of couple of months, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. There's a few things I need to change on it, but for a first official event, I think it went pretty good.
Yeah, you can certainly give yourself a pat on the back for getting the series up and running, and it's good to see the IndyCar. We mentioned it during the broadcast that it's good to see the IndyCars back in Australian sim racing, and we're excited for the rest of the season. And we look forward to seeing you and seeing what you can do for the rest of the season. But we'll let you go, and we'll catch you next time.
Beautiful. Cheers, boys.
Oh, that was our second place. Oh, Edward's gone. Edward's back! Yay! That was our second place man, Chris Purnell. A decent race to Chris tonight, Edward. And anyone else you'd like to interview, Edward, before we wrap?
Well, I would have liked to get our winner in here, but he's not around. So I think we can probably wrap it up there. Got a really good idea of both sides of that battle towards the end of the race. Both of those guys in fuel concerns there as well. Would love to have known what Gary Hamilton was doing in order to save the fuel the way that he was, so he didn't have those concerns. As far as we could see, he was getting more laps than anyone else. And as we heard from Foster, they were maximising their tanks. Everyone else. So, yeah, it was definitely a very strategic race, as you mentioned earlier on, a race of attrition, and sets us up really well for the remainder of the season, I think, because we're going to get so many different types of races, and this was definitely a tactical one.
Yep, it certainly was. And we're excited for the next one. We'll see you all again in 2 weeks' time for Barber Motorsport Park. And from myself, Edward Foster, and from Matt Hunter as well. Thank you and good night.